Welcome back, everybody, to another Publisher VBA tutorial. So we are continuing on with our wonderful series on using the Publisher object model inside of VBA. And just like the other previous applications, we are going to explore how do we take certain objects, say an Excel table or maybe an Excel chart, and export those objects to a Publisher application. Now, I will warn you, this seems to be very buggy. Now, that's not a surprise to most of us if we've seen the PowerPoint ones, but Publisher seems to be quite buggy. But on top of that, doing operations like pasting multiple charts to different pages seems to be very complex, and it doesn't seem to be possible yet from what I can tell. I have been looking pretty heavily into doing a multiple export, so taking multiple objects and pasting them to different pages in the document, and that seems to be quite challenging. So to start off this series, I will show you how to take at least one object of a table, and I will show you how to copy that to a Publisher document. And then in the next video, I will show you how to do the same using the chart object. Now, for the most part, the code's going to look identical, except for just a few lines. However, I do want to make sure I break those up into two videos just to keep the topics consistent with the other applications. So with that being said, as you can see, I currently have an Excel workbook open. I do have a table in it, and I do have a chart in it. In fact, I have two sheets inside of my workbook. One is called Objects, and then the second one is called Objects_2. If I can get the multiple export working, I will show how to do that. However, for the time being, we will focus primarily on this object sheet. So with that being said, the first thing I'm going to have you do is jump over to your developer tab, which I'm assuming you have enabled at this point. And then from here, I am going to go to my Visual Basic editor, and I'll click that. That will open up my Visual Basic editor window. And then from here, inside your VBA project pane, I want you to select the workbook that you're currently in, and under that modules folder, select it, then right click, go over to Insert, and then down to Module. From here, we're going to give our module a name. We'll call it Export Table to PowerPoint. And then once, oh, sorry, not PowerPoint. Why did I say PowerPoint? To Publisher. It just goes to show how much on autopilot I am. And then from here, because we are going to be using a different object library, there are a couple options that you have when it comes to writing your code. One option is you can use late binding. And so late binding is great for those individuals who plan to share their code with individuals across maybe their organization, across their group. The reason that's a beneficial way to share your code is with late binding. What happens is you're not enabling the reference library. And so the problem that can happen is if you enable a reference library and then you send your code over to somebody who is on a different version of Office, and then VBA tries to go and find that version of the object library that you were using, it's going to return an error because the person is on a different version. So the version of that reference library doesn't exist on their system. So if you're planning to share the code with somebody else, I would highly encourage you to use late binding. If this is going to be for your personal use, then I would encourage you to use early binding, as it will help with code development because you will be able to use features like IntelliSense. So if you want to enable the object reference library, you're going to go up to the Tools section of your ribbon, down to References. Now, I already have it enabled because I've used it before, but you can clearly see up at the top, I have a Microsoft Publisher 16.0 object library. Now, if this is the first time you're using the library, it's not going to be up here at the top for you. You're going to have to scroll down a little bit, down to M for Microsoft, and you can see there's a lot of object libraries. But if you go down to P for Publisher, you should see it right around here. You just want to make sure there is a check in that box. If there's a check, it means it's enabled and you can use it. So right now I have a check, so I can use it. Once you do that, you can press OK, and that's all you need to do if you want to use early binding. And then from here, we can start writing our code. So the first thing that we are going to be doing is we are going to be declaring our object variables. We've done this plenty of times, as you can well imagine. So I'll create a new subroutine. I will call it export table to publisher. And actually, I'll be a little bit more explicit. I'll say export Excel table, which is really just a list object, to publisher. Then from here, we're going to declare our variables. We've done this before. We'll start out with our publisher variables. We will have to create a new instance of the publisher application. So guess what? Means we need to do the publisher application object. So we go into publisher, then application, and there you go. We will also be creating a document inside of our wonderful application. So I will also be doing a publisher document object. Our document is made up of pages, so I'm going to also need to create a page. So in this situation, I'm going to declare a publisher.page object. And then finally, on our page, we're going to have a shape. That shape is that Excel table or that Excel chart, whatever it is. It's considered a shape inside of publisher. So I'm also going to declare a shape object that we can create a reference to. So this is our publisher variables. Let's do our Excel variables. The first Excel variable is going to be called Excel book. This will be our workbook, so the workbook that we're currently in. Then next, we're going to have a sheet object. This will be the sheet that has the object that I want to copy over to publisher. And then finally, because in this specific video, we are working with a list object, a table, then we are going to declare a list object variable. That is it for declaring your variables. So now we can start writing the other portion of our code. The first one is we need to grab the object that we need to copy. So we're going to have to basically navigate it by following the object hierarchy. The first level we need to start at is the workbook. So I'm going to set the Excel book equal to this workbook. Remember that this workbook is the workbook that I'm writing this code in. So the code that you're seeing written in front of you, that is being referenced in this workbook. Notice that I have the workbook and then my personal workbook, my personal macro workbook to be more specific. Do not reference this one, reference this one. Once you grab that workbook, we're going to grab a worksheet from our particular workbook. I can see those those worksheets from here on the VBA project pane. So I'm going to grab the object worksheets. So fancy. Set the Excel sheet variable equal to Excel book. Our workbook has a worksheets collection. And guess what? We can grab our worksheet by passing through the name or the key from the collection standpoint. So I have my worksheet. I know on my worksheet that there is a list objects collection that contains all the list objects. However, in our situation, we only have one list object on my sheet. So I'm going to grab it in a very specific manner. I'm going to grab the list object on the sheet. I'm going to set the Excel table object variable equal to the Excel sheet. I know there's a list objects collection. I know I can reference an object in that collection by passing through the index. I'm going to use the index of one, or basically the order in which they were created. So this is going to grab the first table that was created on that sheet. Well, guess what? The first one is the only one. So it makes it very simple. And then from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now start going over to publisher. Now for publisher, you can clearly see down on my little taskbar down here, I don't have the application open. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new instance of publisher. However, we're going to do it in a very specific way. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to write this on error resume next. So basically what this will do is if there's an error, it's just going to keep going. Keep in mind, this is a good and a bad, because if there's an error and it doesn't let you know, it will just basically kind of skip past it. However, I'm doing this because what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and grab the active instance of publisher if it is in the background. The reason I am doing that is I want to make it where if the user wants to basically create a new document without opening up a new instance of publisher, it makes it go a little bit faster. But more importantly, it makes it where it kind of, I would say, just makes it use the active instance. So it's just a little bit quicker and a little bit more intuitive from the user perspective. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab the active instance of publisher if it's there. Keep in mind, we don't always know if it's going to be there. So we'll set our pub app variable equal to get object. I'm not going to provide the path, but I am going to provide the class, and that is just the program ID. So I just need to pass through publisher application. And then from here, it's going to try and grab it. If it tries to grab it and it's not there, it does return an error. So if the application is not open, then we get a 429 error. So that very specific error basically says that it's not open. And if it's not open, guess what? We need to create a new instance of it. So if it's not open, we need to open it up ourselves. How do we do that? Not too bad. Just open the application because it's not open. Okay. So first thing is I'm going to clear my error. So I'm going to call that clear method on my error object. I'm then going to take and set my pub app equal to a new instance of the publisher application. Okay. Now, publisher is a little bit different, and I will show you. It's a little bit different compared to, PowerPoint. And I just realized I didn't make it visible. So another important thing that you need to make sure that you do is you need to make sure that it is visible. But I think in this one, something happened, which is probably me from doing it earlier. So I'm going to first make sure that I have no active instances of it in the background because I was working on the code a little bit earlier. And I do want to make sure that everything is going smoothly. And then the other thing I probably need to do is I probably need to make sure that this is, let me do this. I'm going to do this really quickly. So if I want to see the error, this is what we're getting. So this is telling me it can't make the application that I need to run. That's new. That hasn't happened yet before. So in a certain regard, this is kind of nice because it is showing you what potentially can go wrong. I will just copy this really quickly just to make sure that maybe I didn't misspell anything. And then I will run it again. Okay, so that's not there. And then from here, I'm going to set the pub app equal to, let's try this. Okay, so that's not working either. What I'm going to try to do one final time is I will try to open it up again to make sure it is working. I will double check this. Let's try this really quickly. I just want to check one thing. So that time it seemed to work. No problem. Let's try this one more time. Okay. What is different? What is different? Objects, list object, shape. Let me try this really quickly. Let's create a new document. Sometimes, not necessarily going to say this is too out of the ordinary, but I will try it. Sometimes, like I said, publisher is a little bit different. Okay, so my fears have come true. So this is also a good thing to note because, again, this is new for a lot of people. I'm kind of glad that happened because I think for a lot of people, especially if you're coming from a PowerPoint background, you would have been a little bit confused by what had just happened. Normally with the publisher application objects, or at least I would say with other applications, there's a visible property that you can set. Publisher doesn't seem to behave that way. And so what seems to happen is even though the application is created in a sense, you're not going to see it until you add a document. So with PowerPoint, different. PowerPoint, you could just create it, you can make it visible, there would be no presentation. With Publisher, it seems to be a little bit different. It behaves a little bit differently, which is you need to add that document in order to actually see the application itself. So personally, I kind of like that happening. I think that's a little bit confusing compared to other applications we've used in the past. This will also lead into another segue that I'll cover probably in the next video is pasting to multiple pages. That seems to be a very difficult topic. So continuing on, we've now created a new document. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the first page in the document. However, there's only one page, so that's basically all there is. And then from here, I'm going to do pubdoc.pages and then 1. So I'm grabbing the first page. Then from here, I'm going to copy the Excel table. So I'm going to take that Excel table, I'm going to go to that range property, and then I'm going to call that copy method. Now, we've seen with other scenarios or other applications, we have to pause Excel just for like a second to make sure the content that is inside of our table actually makes it to the clipboard. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause the application for 1 second. I will tell you that in some cases you might need to do like 2 seconds. Just depends how much content you're copying. The important thing is you want to make sure that it actually makes it to the clipboard. So I'm going to say application.wait, take the current time, and then add 1 second to it. So I can do pound 12:00:01 a.m. I will add 1 second, and it will literally pause everything for 1 second. Then from here, I'm going to paste the table on the page. Hopefully it works. I'm going to take that pub page. I'm going to do the paste. What is it though? Sorry, not the paste. We're going to do shapes, the shapes collection, and then we're going to do the paste method. Let's see what we get when we do this. A lot of times I'll like to clear my clipboard before I do it. So if we do get an error, I will show you what we can do. But it looks like in this situation, it worked fine. I will tell you, do not be surprised if sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. I've had times where I've waited a second and it seems like it basically caused an issue. So this would basically be it. And then from the object standpoint, it's basically considered a table object. So it's very interesting only because I've tried to see if you can do OLE objects and stuff like that. It doesn't seem possible from a pasting perspective. There is no paste special method for at least the shapes collection. So again, this is just another differentiating factor if you wanted to use Word or PowerPoint and then compare it to Publisher. It is a little bit different. I will say that. I think my experience so far has been, while it's possible to take objects and copy them over to Publisher, you're very limited with what you can do. And so even though you can clearly see, you can paste it here, you don't get a lot of flexibility as to linking it and stuff like that. However, the more interesting part is if I do actually go to the paste special, I can see that I do have this capability. So even though I can do it from the user interface perspective, from the object model's perspective, it doesn't seem to be possible. And that is quite odd to me. It doesn't mean you can't add it. However, it's not from a pasting perspective. So you can't paste it in and say, oh, I want to create this linked paste special object. Instead, you actually have to add an OLE linked object, and you have to provide a little bit more information to it. So I will probably cover that at some point, but for right now, I'm just keeping it purely on the copying aspect. So that basically does it for this video. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comments below. If you yourself experience any errors like I've experienced when recording this video, feel free to share those as well. And especially if you came up with a solution, I would be curious to see how you came up with it. Additionally, if you do come across a paste special operation that I'm just not aware of and I couldn't find in the documentation, I'd be very happy to see that as well. I think that would help a lot of people out. It looks like with Publisher, there's not a ton of examples out there. So I'm kind of, I guess, bridging that gap as best I can. But if you come across a solution yourself, I would be very happy to see that as well. In our next video, we're going to be basically doing exactly the same thing we did here, but we're going to be then using the chart object. So we're going to be showing you how to copy a chart over to Publisher. So thank you again for watching, everybody. We'll see you in the next video.